grief and loss threatened to take him apart completely. By the time this story ends, you will not see Dirty Dancing the same way again. Patrick Wayne Swayze arrived on August 18, 1952, in Houston, Texas, and from the very beginning, ordinary was never going to be on the table. His mother Patsy ran her dance studio like a temple where discipline was the religion and movement was the only acceptable prayer, and her son was not offered a gentle path through it. He was pushed into it, shaped by it, and measured against it from the moment he could stand upright. Ballet, jazz, gymnastics, figure skating, while other boys on his street were first throwing footballs badly and arguing about baseball cards. Patrick stood at the bar, correcting his posture and learning to command his body with a focus most adults never develop across an entire lifetime. None of that discipline made him soft, which is the misunderstanding people always reach for when they hear the word ballet attached to a man's name. Patrick played football with an aggression that made coaches stop and reconsider their lineups. Trained in martial arts, with the tackle that destroyed his knee could have ended everything, and for most teenagers, it would have. A dream of athletic scholarships collapsed in a single moment on a football field, and what replaced it wasn't a plan so much as a redirection, the sense that his body still needed to move, still needed to express something, and by 1972, with his knee pieced back together and Houston's humid flatness behind him, Patrick boarded a bus to New York City carrying ambition. He couldn't quite articulate, and a physical talent that hadn't yet found its proper stage. New York was not gentle with him. The studios of the Joffrey Ballet and the Harkness Ballet had no interest in his backstory or his broken dreams. They cared only about what his body could produce under pressure. And Patrick answered that question with hours of rehearsal that continued long after the other dancers had gone home. Instructors who had watched thousands of students move through those studios stopped and looked twice. Something about him was different, not polished exactly, but burning with a quality that technique alone could never possibility. Then the knee collapsed again. Reconstruction surgery ended the collaboration before it began. And what might have been one of the defining artistic partnerships of a generation dissolved quietly into the category of things that almost happened. Patrick redirected again, the way he always redirected, not by grieving the closed door, but Wood's outer edges. He appeared in the Broadway production of Grease, wearing someone else's leather jacket in someone else's iconic role, and audiences leaned forward anyway, because something about him refused to be borrowed. His first film, the largely forgotten Skate-Town, USA in 1979, didn't make him a star. A Marine trainer here, a gang leader there, a guest television appearance that aired and evaporated, none of it produced the arrival everyone who watched him could sense was coming. What those years produced instead was pressure, the slow accumulation of talent and hunger and discipline circling something enormous without quite reaching it. The storm was building. The question was only when. The answer came in 1987, wrapped in a film no studio executive took seriously and carrying a budget that was nearly an insult to everyone involved. Dirty Dancing was supposed to fill a release slot and disappear. What it actually did was tear through popular culture like a freight train, through a paper wall. And at the center of it was Patrick Swayze as Johnny Castle, a working-class dance instructor at a resort where the wealthy looked straight through him, talented in ways the people around him were too limited to properly value, proud in ways the world kept trying to humble. Patrick didn't borrow that experience from somewhere outside himself. He had lived every cell of it. The ballet world had seen him as a film actor who wasn't serious enough. Hollywood had seen him as a dancer who might not be able to truly act. An entire career spent being placed in categories that didn't fit and then being judged for not fitting them had brought him directly to this role. And when he delivered the line that has been quoted more times than perhaps any other in romantic cinema, it wasn't a performance. It was a declaration. The version of Dirty Dancing the public received was a fairy tale, and like all fairy tales, it required editing. The real story of that, set in the summer of 1986 at Lake Lure, North Carolina, was considerably more human, considerably more difficult, and in its own strange way, considerably more interesting than anything that ended up on screen. Before Johnny Castle and Baby Houseman ever looked at each other across a dance floor, Patrick and Jennifer Grey had already discovered that their energies produced friction rather than harmony, and that discovery had happened years earlier. Didn't want him there. He apologized for whatever had been difficult between them before. The walls she had built came down, and when they stepped in front of the camera moments later, something happened in that room that even the most experienced producers on the project recognized as something they couldn't manufacture or replicate. The tension between them converted into electricity. Their differences became chemistry. Their shared history became heat. None of that made the set easy. Patrick was nursing his damaged knee through choreography that would have challenged a perfectly healthy dancer, hiding pain behind every precisely executed step, because stopping was something his psychology simply would not allow. Jennifer carried the weight of being the film's emotional center while battling a self-doubt that had followed her through her career like a shadow that grew longer under bright lights. His perfectionism, forged through years of ballet training, expressed itself as a demand for precision that she experienced as pressure. When she missed a step, he corrected her. When a scene required multiple takes to reach emotionally, his patience thinned visibly, and she could feel it. From his side of the equation, this was professionalism. What? First, you owed the craft. From hers, it felt controlling, even diminishing. She was already afraid of not being enough, and his intensity made that fear louder. Crew members described days where the two leads barely spoke between takes, existing in studied silence on opposite sides of the set until the director called action, and they became inexplicably and pressure and the specific terror of being emotionally exposed in front of someone whose judgment she feared. Director Emile Ardolino, possessing the particular wisdom of someone who understood that authenticity was worth more than control, kept the cameras rolling through all of it. What emerged was a moment no amount of deliberate choreography could have produced something unscripted, and genuinely felt that audiences have been responding to for decades without ever fully understanding why. The lift is where all of it arrived at its most concentrated point. The image that ended up on posters and got parodied in 100 films and television shows and wedding receptions came from a moment that Jennifer had refused to rehearse even once. Her fear of being dropped, of committing her body entirely to another person's strength at a height that allowed no margin for error, was absolute, and no amount of coaching had moved it. Patrick, who believed in repetition the way some people believe in gravity, found her refusal almost incomprehensible. His entire training was built on the idea that trust comes from practice, that the body learns safety through repetition, that you earn the right to look effortless by doing the thing until it becomes second nature. Her refusal to rehearse felt to him like a refusal to do the work, a refusal to meet him where he needed her to be. On the day of the shoot, the time for negotiation had run out. Jennifer ran. Patrick caught her. One take, unrehearsed, carrying the full weight of everything that had been difficult between them, and the lift happened perfectly, held together by adrenaline and necessity and something neither of them could have planned. Patrick talked about that moment for the rest of his life with a quality of wonder that never quite left his voice because it taught him something his training hadn't. Sometimes, first, trust doesn't arrive through preparation. Sometimes you only discover whether someone will catch you by jumping, and sometimes the jump itself is the thing that makes the catch possible. Away from the noise of the set, Patrick had been building a life that bore almost no resemblance to what Hollywood's version of him suggested. Lisa Nemi had first crossed his path when she was 14 years old, and he was a student at his mother's dance school in Houston. And by 1975, they were married, woven into each other's lives in a way that the entertainment industry rarely produces and almost never sustains. Lisa was not decorative, not background, not the wife who waited at home while the famous husband lived his life. She was his creative partner, his business partner, the person he flew planes with and built a ranch with and wrote scripts alongside. When the press was breathless about the chemistry between Patrick and Jennifer Grey, when fan letters arrived by the thousands asking about the on-screen romance, Patrick was going home to Lisa. "She's my home," he said once, and the simplicity of that phrase carried more weight than anything he delivered in front of a camera. What they built together was real and physical, and built to last acres of California land, turned into a working ranch with stables and open sky, garages full of Harley-Davidsons, and classic American muscle cars, a pilot's license he earned, and an aircraft he bought because being elevated and untethered from the first ground was where he felt most completely himself. Ghost in 1990 proved that Dirty Dancing hadn't been a fluke, that he could make audiences feel something ancient and aching and entirely unwilling to let him disappear. She remained there until he returned to himself. And her presence in those years was the thing he later credited with saving him. A horseback riding accident in 1997 broke both legs and tore 4 tendons in his shoulder. In the room, and the most completely, helplessly human. The lift was real. The pottery wheel was real. The nervous laughter on set and the one perfect unrehearsed take and the silent battles behind the smiles were all real. And the truest thing, the thing that outlasted all of it, the fame and the friction and the grief and the pain, was a love story that never needed a camera rolling to be worth watching. Patrick Swayze's new life was fragile, he said once, and knowing that, he refused to treat it as a reason to stop moving. Nobody was ever going to put him in a corner. Not then, not now, not ever.